Trust your gut. All right, hello and welcome to the postgrad year. This is a commonplace book, commonplace binder. I'm going to set this down and I will start speaking slowly. Hello and welcome. No, we already did that. Trust your gut. Sometimes there are going to be things that can't really be thought through and you just kind of have to do them. So this is not really one of those things. This is a commonplace book, commonplace binder. And so the thing I was holding up, this is my commonplace book, but it's a binder. So what's going on? Well, I mislabeled it as a commonplace book. I should probably change that to binder. I used it for the first time, look at that, years ago. Crazy. This is my demonstration binder, so it helps me demonstrate the concepts. This is video number 79, so we need to look for 79. Archiving. Paper archive. There we go. I'm going to set this down. So these 100 videos help push towards quality. So at the beginning, I'm just making random stuff. I don't know what's going to work. I don't know what's not going to work. It seems like some random things are working right now. Like, for example, I made a video on the history of commonplace books, or at least commonplace binders, which isn't really a thing that exists because a commonplace binder is just a commonplace book. But what I found really interesting in the data is that most of the views came from men in Saudi Arabia. So maybe the history is interesting to people from the Middle East, or maybe just that one country, or maybe it's just one guy watching the video and over and over again. I don't know. The point is, that was unusual. I also saw a video on the channel that did very poorly. That one was about journaling. And the videos about journaling on this channel seem to do very poorly in general, partially because I am not the type of person to focus everything on a journal, and probably because the people who do focus on journaling when it comes to commonplace books are only focusing on that specifically, and that's not the thing I focus on. So it's like, why would someone watch me for that when they could just watch the person who does that all the time? You know what I'm saying? So this is the thing I do all the time. As I try to push towards quality, I am churning out 100 videos every year. So let's get this done. Minimizing vulnerability. If you write the things down and if you say, oh, it's just in my memory place, you're not going to have to be vulnerable, right? Well, you might have to be vulnerable with yourself. Write down what actually is the problem. That's more of a journaling or diary kind of thing. But maybe what actually is the solution. So you might have all these thoughts and they might be like working their way towards the point. But you might have to write them down and then look at them later to actually get the full value out of it. Because, I don't know about you, but I don't like looking at vulnerable anything, really, for the first, 3 months. Like, if I've written down something about emotions, I don't want to deal with that. That's annoying. But if I let it sit for 3 months, I'm probably not going to have as strong of an attachment towards the cause or the solution or whatever else, because I've kind of processed it a little bit, and also it's not going to feel as personal because it feels like it was written by another person because it was written 3 months ago. Now, once it's more than 3 years old, then it's like, okay, that's a totally different person. That's not even me at that point. Who is that guy? So you might have to balance that out a little bit. Deep thoughts. How are you going to get to the deep thoughts if you write the stuff down on paper? Well, it might be the deep thoughts are actually just multiple thoughts, one after another, actually thought out. And so one thing that used to be very, very beneficial for me when I was playing chess in middle school and high school is just I would have more thoughts than the other person. So I wouldn't necessarily have the best thought. I wouldn't know how to bring my bishops and knights and queen all the way up to the middle and then do decisive strikes to sacrifice them in front of the king to get an easy checkmate in the first 20 moves. That's not what I'm talking about. I would force the other person to think really hard, while I would just, trust my gut and do these little moves, which would, sort of reduce the person's options and make them sweat a little bit. Also, I'm thinking about sweat right now because I had to turn the air conditioner off because it's a little bit too loud for recording, and it is June, so I'm going to try to zoom through this. Always changing clothes in the summer. You are probably going to be changing your thoughts. I don't know if you're going to be changing clothes constantly. That seems a little random. Remaining relevant. Maybe the way to remain relevant is to change the shirt every time. So I've been trying to wear the shirts in sets of 4. Every so often there will be a set of 2. That's basically when I record 2 at a time, and I'm like, wow, those were long videos. I gotta take a nap. Or I like lost my voice or something. Like right now, it seems like my voice is starting to go. Probably because I eat cookies rather than a Twix. Whoopsies. What doesn't serve you? So talking about this sort of thing doesn't really help me out. But if I wrote this sort of thought down, I could write down, okay, he said Twix, and he said sweat, and what else is in there? Chess. And then figure out which one of those things is the least relevant, like the sweat thing, probably not relevant at all. But the food might help make a grocery list eventually. The chess might help come up with the idea that, like, oh, maybe I could make like a little guide to give to a friend whenever that friend is like trying to learn how to play chess. Because not everybody knows every single thing for their entire lives. Might even be that I forget and I have to reteach it to myself. Stuck on one vision. So if you're like, oh, I'm gonna have a commonplace binder because I saw that in a video and I'm great, I could have this thing. Yeah. That's more of a transition zone. So I feel like a commonplace binder isn't really the best of any world, but it is close enough to get people to figure out which one they actually want. So it's probably good to still keep one, but it might be you don't really care about all the stuff changing order. It might be you keep everything in the same order, in which you would just use a normal commonplace book. If you're like, wow, I'm completely out of space, I can't figure out how to prioritize anything, I just need to hold on to a little bit of everything because there's way more information I need to hold on to. Okay, well then you use a digital system. If you find, anything written down on a sheet of paper can be moved to a different place, and that's really exciting, then you should probably go into like Zettelkasten, which is just about moving these little cards around and having them in a whole bunch of different boxes and writing notes that link everything together. It can get a little crazy, so never finished. That is kind of what I hear about Zettelkasten. Also, what I kind of say about commonplace books, because if you work on this thing, which is about, trusting your gut, writing down these thoughts, might be the stuff isn't always remaining relevant. And it's never finished because you're constantly having to introduce new ideas while also managing all the old ideas, figuring out which ones you need to prioritize or get rid of, or it can just get really messy. Distillation. So this is kind of like a summary of everything you have, and it's good to summarize the stuff every so often. For example, if you have a whole bunch of leftover notes from school, so you have, an entire binder worth of stuff from one specific subject, it might be good to shrink that down into, I don't know, like 10 pages. But if you can get it down to 100 pages, that's great, because all you have to do is make it a little bit smaller and a little bit sweeter. Build something meaningful. So, like I was saying, if you have hundreds of pages on a thing that you don't really work on anymore, you could probably cut that down a little bit. And it will have meaning, not necessarily because you added a whole bunch of meaning to it, but because you got rid of all the stuff that didn't matter. Living intentionally. Is this going to help you live a more intentional life? Maybe. So one of the things I found that really helped me out at the very beginning is when I would watch videos, I would write down what sort of video I watched. And I had to do that every time I watched a video. And the reason why I was mostly watching videos that were helpful is because I would have to take notes every time I watched a video. Now that might seem like absolute suffering, and it kind of was. So then I decided to only write down the titles of the videos that I liked. So if I put a like on the video, then I would save that video. But then, I kept increasing the quality level that I needed to pass until it eventually got to the point where I was saving basically nothing, and then I ended up saving literally everything again. Except that was exhausting, so all of a sudden I was saving nothing. So you gotta be a little careful about what you try to save or not save, because if you have too much in any direction, it might just overwhelm the system or, the brain upstairs, and it's not always gonna work out. Where are we? living intentionally, just chill, guys. Just relax. It's okay. So, you know, if you go all in on one specific thing, it might not work out, and then you might have to backtrack a little bit. And I don't think there's any real way around that, unless your family, on all of its different branches, has been doing this for centuries, and you know the exact methods that work in your specific isolated community, which is all about, like, it's always going to be a little weird and dysfunctional. And that's okay, because you just figure out how to fix it. Reframe the question. So, is it a problem that the system changes all the time? Maybe that's actually good. Maybe that's more of a feature than a bug. So why would this be good? Well, you still got to trust your gut. There might be times where it's like, I don't know if this is working out. It just feels wrong. And then you could just like push it aside. And then you might get rid of like 10% of your workload, which is fantastic. And if you actually can get rid of it, and if it's not really necessary and you're just doing it because you've always been doing it, well then don't do that thing. Like if it's not enjoyable, if it's not beneficial, if nobody else is doing it, then like, why is it there? And sometimes it might be something is there because it's holding up something else or preventing you from making a certain bad decision. Like for example, every so often I'll cut up one of these cards into a whole bunch of little bits. I'll be like, oh, I could fit it right here, and this could be like a special card. It's like, no, you have 20 cards. Just save the thing within the 20 cards. Future of thinking. So maybe in the future, we don't really have deep thought. We're a little distracted by stuff like deep mind. You know, we're all focused on what the digital stuff can do for us. We're not really thinking anything. And in that case, it's probably good to push towards quality by just focusing on, I don't even know where I put it here, but building something meaningful. Yeah, it's always changing. So future thinking might go anywhere, but we do want to be able to continue to trust our gut and still be working towards something. A clear identity. That's what you got to have. You got to have a clear focus on what you want and what you're going to get and how you're going to do it. Practical use case. If we're just going to think about all the different quotes related to that quote, it's going to be like, wait a second, that sounds kind of like a Spider-Man quote. Or a quote from a Spider-Man movie. What's going on here? Well, the practical use case is that we are going to fix our problems, or at least create things that will prevent us from having the problems in the first place. For example, it can be good to write down phone numbers or have a backup of your list of phone numbers just in case the phone gets lost, destroyed, or you're otherwise inconvenienced by the phone not being around anymore. Predictable redundancy. So there might be some things which are pretty obvious that they need to be fixed. Like, for example, if we're writing everything down on paper, if we lose the paper, it's game over. So it might be good to have the paper and another piece of paper somewhere else that says the same thing, or a picture of the paper, or some other digital backup. Ways. So how are we going to do this? Well, remember, if you're doing a commonplace, for that, if you don't know what a commonplace book is, basically just... Okay, so you know what Wikipedia is. And so imagine all of Wikipedia stuffed inside a single book, but only the information from Wikipedia that you find the most interesting. So it's like your own personal encyclopedia. But yeah, if you have a commonplace, it might be more of a journal or a sketchbook or a diary or some like scientific notes, or like it could be a whole bunch of different things, partially because the definition is kind of loose and goes back for some amount of time. And so it depends on how people define things to figure out what even counts in the first place. But yeah, if you decide you're going to work on a commonplace and you're like, I guess I could work on the binder. Do you need to start with the binder? Do you just start with the commonplace? A book? You could do it in whatever way you want. Like I'm not really going to say, this is the only way to do the thing. Because it's not. Like, this is just making sure you keep doing it. So if it's miserable, it's not going to get done. And that's kind of the only requirement. Just like do it and make it better. Like push towards quality. Setup. How do you set it up? How do you actually set it up? I want to know. Okay. I'm going to pick up the binder. This is a binder, so you will need a binder. Binder has rings, which means you need to figure out how to put something in the rings, which means either you get a sheet of plastic that allows you to slide pages in, or you just have pages that are hole punched in the same way. Then they just go in here. When you're writing, you're going to need something to write with, so a pencil, a pen, you know, you could use a crayon. I don't care. Title, content. Okay, we're going to close this. As I'm very focused on all this paper stuff and all these things which are just about redundancy, basically, I should have a whole bunch of different platforms, right? Well, currently it's just the YouTube and the Tumblr. And so if you want to know more about that, the next video talks about why I don't have an Instagram. So if you think that might be interesting, you know, click the thing. I don't know where it's going to be. I think it'll be on this side, but we'll see, because this is reversed, and it's been very difficult to figure out where I am because my camera or my phone had an update and it reversed everything. And so I don't know where anything is. Yeah. Okay. Bye.